Everyone expected the Russian Sambo champion to win easily. After all, he was undefeated, bigger, louder, and famous for finishing fights in the first round. He walked into the arena like he owned it, smiling confidently, waving to the crowd as if the fight had already been decided. The commentators kept mentioning his long list of titles, his powerful throws, and his brutal submissions. But what people did not expect was the Filipino fighter standing across from him, calm, quiet, and almost invisible to the crowd. His name was Rian, a local fighter who trained in a small gym, a fighter no one talked about, a fighter who many believed had no chance. And the Russian champion made his opinion very clear when he laughed during the stare-down, leaned forward, and said in front of the cameras, "This will be easy." The crowd gasped, and the Filipino fighter simply nodded without saying a word. What no one knew was that Rian had been underestimated his entire life, and this fight was his chance to prove something not only to the world but to himself. When the bell rang, everyone expected the Russian to rush forward and end it instantly. Instead, he danced around Rian, mocking him, pretending to stumble, pointing at him as if he was not even worth taking seriously. The crowd began to boo, but the Russian champion only grew more confident. He kept dropping his hands, giving exaggerated yawns, and even turning his back for a second as if daring Rian to attack. But Rian stayed disciplined. He kept his guard up, his eyes sharp, his breaths controlled. He watched like a man studying a puzzle, waiting for the right moment rather than reacting to the insults. People watching online began typing comments like, "This Filipino guy is scared? He's frozen. He's no match," but they were wrong. And the truth was about to unfold. The Russian champion lunged forward with a huge punch, expecting Rian to crumble, but instead, Rian moved just enough for the punch to miss by inches. The shock on the Russian's face made the crowd roar. That was the first warning that the fight was not going the way he expected. He attacked again and again, throwing heavy strikes, but each time Rian slipped, ducked, or stepped away with perfect timing. The Russian grew frustrated. No one had ever made him miss like that. Rian had spent years training with limited equipment, learning how to survive against stronger fighters by using technique and timing. Every morning he woke up before sunrise just to afford extra training before going to work. Every night he practiced alone in the dark gym, reviewing movements over and over. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But he was disciplined in a way the Russian champion had never encountered. As the round continued, the Russian's confidence turned into irritation. He rushed forward recklessly, trying to grab Rian for a signature Sambo throw. The crowd prepared to see Rian slammed onto the mat, but in a split second Rian shifted his weight, stepped aside, and the Russian's own momentum sent him stumbling to the ground. The arena erupted in shock. The champion jumped up quickly, embarrassed and angry, but Rian remained calm. No celebration. No show, just focus. The Russian charged again, and this time Rian delivered a sharp counterpunch right on the chin. It wasn't the hardest punch in the world, but it was perfectly timed, and it froze the Russian in place for a moment. The audience began to sense something was shifting. The Sambo champion wasn't smiling anymore. By the second round, things became even more surprising. The Russian was breathing heavily while Rian looked fresh. The champion tried to grapple, but Rian circled away. He tried to strike, but Rian kept reading him like a book. Every move the Russian made, Rian anticipated. Every trick the Russian tried, Rian neutralized. And then came the moment that shocked everyone. The Russian attempted a powerful takedown, leaning in with all his weight. Rian timed it perfectly and delivered a clean uppercut that sent the champion stumbling backward. The crowd exploded as they watched the Russian fighter wobble for the first time in his career. Even the commentators were stunned. They started talking about how unbelievable it was that the quiet Filipino fighter, who no one expected to win, was controlling the rhythm of the match. But Rian was not fighting to impress anyone. He was fighting because this moment represented years of sacrifice, pain, and dreams. The Russian grew desperate. He grabbed Rian and tried to force him to the ground. Their bodies collided, and the Russian managed to push him against the ropes. But Rian planted his feet, twisted his hips, and executed a counter-throw so clean that the arena went silent before erupting into pure disbelief. The Filipino fighter had thrown the undefeated Sambo champion using his own style against him. That single moment became the turning point of the entire fight. The Russian looked humiliated as he stood up. His ego cracked, his rhythm broken. He charged again, but this time Rian met him with a flurry of fast punches, clean, accurate, and impossible to defend. Each strike connected, pushing the Russian back step by step until he crashed into the corner. Shock filled his eyes. It was the first time he had ever felt overwhelmed. With only seconds left in the round, Rian delivered the blow that would be replayed all over social media for weeks. He faked a low punch, making the Russian drop his guard, then delivered a spinning back fist directly to the temple. The sound echoed through the arena as the Russian dropped to his knees. Stunned, the referee stepped in quickly, waving his hands. The fight was over. The Filipino fighter had shocked the entire world. The crowd erupted into cheers, chanting Rian's name. Online viewers went wild, turning him into an overnight sensation. Commentators who had doubted him apologized live on air. Meanwhile, the Russian fighter sat on the mat in disbelief, no longer mocking, no longer laughing. He stood up slowly, walked toward Rian, and in front of the cameras, bowed his head in respect. The same man who insulted him now honored him. Rian, still humble, simply smiled and lifted the Russian's hand in a gesture of sportsmanship. That moment became the highlight of the night. Two fighters, once divided by arrogance and doubt, now unified in mutual respect. When reporters interviewed Rian, he spoke softly, saying, "I wasn't fighting to prove anyone wrong. I was fighting to prove that discipline, heart, and quiet work matter." His words spread online, inspiring thousands of people who knew what it felt like to be underestimated. The Russian fighter later admitted in an interview that he had made a huge mistake. He confessed that he underestimated Rian because he didn't look strong or experienced. "But he is the strongest man I ever fought," he said. "Not because of muscles, but because of patience and courage." The victory changed Rian's life. He received new opportunities, sponsorships, and international invitations. But he stayed grounded, training in the same humble gym, helping younger fighters, and reminding them that loud confidence means nothing if the work behind it is empty. The world remembered him as the fighter who was mocked and underestimated, yet answered with skill, patience, and humility. His story traveled far beyond the ring, becoming a symbol of quiet strength and a reminder that greatness is often hidden behind people the world ignores. And the Russian Sambo champion who once laughed at him, he later returned to train with Rian in the Philippines, determined to learn from the fighter he once mocked. Their rivalry transformed into friendship. Respect replaced arrogance. Growth replaced ego. In the end, what happened next did not just shock the world. It humbled two men, inspired millions, and proved once again that true power does not come from shouting, bragging, or showing off. True power comes from the heart of someone who works in silence, keeps believing, and never stops fighting. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this.